It is 6 o'clock. I would like to open the September 24th, 2024 City Commission meeting. Will you please call the roll?
Mayor Adamchak,
Present.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
In attendance.
Commissioner Mata,
Here.
Commissioner Minton.
Yep.
We have 5 commissioners present. The quorum of 3 is met.
Thank you. Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commissioners, as this is a work session, we do not need to allow public comment, but is there a motion to allow public comment this evening?
I'll move to allow public comment.
I'll second that.
Will you call the roll, Jared, please?
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Mata,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Yes.
Mayor Adamchak.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The first item on our agenda is an update from the Riley County Police Department. Director Pete.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Commission, Brian Pete with the Riley County Police Department. And I was just going to go over a few statistics and just give some basic updates as to what the department is up to. First foremost, to talk about our average daily population within our jails. We are at max to the point now that we're looking at purchasing cots to put into the A-pod area. It's one of these things that's just, I think, we are working as hard as we can with the county attorney's office, with the judges, with everyone else throughout the community, and looking for alternative ways other than arrests, things to that effect. But the arrests that we are bringing in are warranted for the incident or the alleged incident to include safety to the community. So I just wanted to
Could I just ask, Director, are we holding people quite a while before they go to serious prison?
Yes, actually we have roughly, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the area between 7 to 12 individuals who are awaiting trial for serious charges that they're looking at prison.
I meant more the people who'd already been tried and convicted. Sometimes that wait has been in the past pretty serious.
Yes, we've had a backlog of that, but now we're at the point that as folks are coming in, journal entries with the county attorney's office as well as with the defense are going through rather quickly, so we're seeing a very quick turnaround when individuals have been convicted.
Thank you.
Okay. So specifically, I'll look at the offenses of the month of August, which is last month. For Part 1 crimes in August, we were roughly 19% below the 5-year average. Our year-to-date, we're down 21.4% from the 5-year average. And both Part 1 violent and property crimes were below the 5-year average. For our violent crimes, we were 5.6% below the 5-year average. Year-to-date, we're down 12% from the 5-year average. There were 13 aggravated assaults and batteries, 2 rapes, 1 robbery, and 0 homicides reported for the month of August. For robberies, there was 1 robbery reported in the month of August, which is right at the 5-year average. Year-to-date, we're down about 50% from the 5-year average. For aggravated assaults and battery, there were 6 aggravated batteries, 7 aggravated assaults reported during the month of August. This is about 1% above the 5-year average. 4 of these incidents were domestic related, and as of the 9th of September, there were arrests in 5 of those incidents. For Part 1 property crimes, we were down 21% from the 5-year average. Property crime year-to-date was about 23% below the 5-year average. Property crime for August included 5 burglaries, 15 larcenies from motor vehicles, 10 auto thefts, and 0 arson incidents. The rest of the incidents were larcenies, and that was 59 incidents. For structural burglaries, we were 40% below the 5-year average. Two of the burglaries were non-residential, 5 were residential. All of them unfortunately occurred within the city of Manhattan. For vehicle burglaries, we were 34% below the 5-year average. Of the 15 vehicle burglaries we've had reported, 10 of them had been, the vehicles had been left unlocked, and 2 of those vehicles contained a firearm. 2 firearms in total were stolen from those vehicles. For motor vehicle thefts, we unfortunately saw an increase of about 43% for the month of August. 7 of those vehicles have been recovered as of the 9th of September. For DUIs, for the month, we were 2% below the 5-year average. DUIs to date are about 2% above the 5-year average. And traffic accidents, the number of traffic accidents were, for the month of August, was about 16% above the 5-year average. And for preventable traffic accidents, the number for August was 28% above the 5-year average. This is, again, as the City Commission may know, that traffic is one of the primary concerns for both the department and has expressed concern for the community. So we're going to continue doing traffic enforcement, but enforcement through education. Not everyone deserves tickets and everything to those effects, but we do want to make sure that we maintain the safety and security of the community.
Chief, have you looked at where those traffic accidents are occurring? And I'm just had a thought that were they perhaps, because we have a lot of construction around town, do you think there was any kind of correlation there?
From looking at the data, I don't think that they were necessarily around the construction locations, if I remember offhand. They normally typically tend to be at the hotspot areas where they've normally where we've seen historically accidents or speeding violations or cell phone violations in the past. I can get that information to you as to where those incidents occurred, but again, with the Riley County Police Department, we use data for our enforcement trends. So if we see significant amount of traffic accidents in one area, we'll move special missions of traffic enforcement and safety to those areas.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Peter, I think that's something that Brian also tracks for the road department. Volume of accidents, severity of accidents at certain locations.
Maybe we can get them out.
I've got a note here. I will get that information to you all as well as to the city. So just a few more other items just to brief the City Commission on. Again, Assistant Director Kurt Muldrip will be retiring December 31st. Captain Aaron Friedline has been selected to be the Assistant Director, and we recently had our promotional process for Captain. Lieutenant Brad Ingalls will be promoted to Captain. He will be moving to the Support Division. And Captain Scott Hayek, who is currently at the Southern Policing Institute, he will be moving to Patrol. Captain Yeager will be moving from administrations to investigations. Captain Steer will be moving from patrol to the administration section, and Captain French will stay in the dungeon. The timeline that we're looking at moving folks into place is we want to benefit, make sure that we benefit from Kurt's knowledge of the department and having a good time to transfer knowledge and institutional wisdom from Kurt to both myself as well as to Captain Friedline. So we're looking at sometime around November, end of October timeframe, that we're going to try to move the senior division commanders in place. Again, that's something that's kind of here or there. This week, we're working on promotional processes for sergeants to lieutenants. Next week or the week after, we'll be working on promotional processes from corporals to sergeants, and then from officers to corporals. So it's a moving target that we're still working towards, but we hope to have at least the lieutenants as well as the captains in place by the end of this year, and then moving to next year, all other supervisors to fall into whichever new sections that we're going to be needing them at, as well as for the needs, again, the needs for the department, but as well as the needs for that individual and helping them grow with their leadership potential.
Do you restructure like this regularly, or is it just because of the retirement?
It's a combination of the two. So yes, at this point, yeah, there was a definite ripple effect here. But every 2 to 3 years, historically, the department has looked at moving sergeants as well as lieutenants to new sections for growth.
Sure.
Of course, there's a positive and a negative with that one.
Yep.
But we work to keep that institutional knowledge in-house.
Okay.
So when is Kurt's last day? I mean, is it the 31st of December, or when are you going to give him a going-away party, so to speak?
That will be December 27th.
Okay.
I can't remember where we have it planned at, but yes, December 27th will be his going-away ceremony, and then we'll actually be looking at potentially swearing in Captain Friedline and promoting her sometime within the next month or so.
Okay.
Okay, and then I think other than that, I just wanted to remind the city commission as well as the community that the Riley County Police Department will be having its community night out. It's going to be a carnival theme. We're going to have it at Seco Park. We have our flyers out. We're pushing this out as well as on social media. This is going to be 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the 10th of October at Seco Park. So we're looking forward to families, individuals from the community, peers, everyone that we work with to come out there, just have a really, really good time. And then the last thing I will bring up is today I was at the FBI headquarters in Kansas. And just so that the commission is aware, we've got a briefing on what the DOJ, the FBI looks at when there are concerns, safety concerns or complaints related to the election system. And for a lot of different reasons, this is something that both the police department as well as the federal government want to make sure that we're staying away, because we want to make sure there are fair elections that are moving forward. So we have been in communications with Rich Fargo, with our federal and state partners, and right now we have no information to suggest that there are any threats within the Manhattan or the Raleigh community.
Thank you.
What's going on with the traffic light cameras? Are they all, or wherever we're putting these cameras?
So we have 2 sets of cameras. The first set are the automatic license plate readers.
Yeah.
Those are in strategic areas throughout the county. Those, I think we might have one more to install, if it hasn't already been installed last week. But those cameras are used to help us track any individuals that anywhere from silver alerts all the way to child abductions or just crimes in general, robberies, things to that effect. And then we do have a camera system in the Aggieville area, which we use for security purposes. Both of them have yielded very good results in the little amount of time, only the few months that they've been up. So our thanks to the law board as well as to the commission as well as to the city for allowing us to put those up. They've helped us out with a lot of different instances that have happened.
Okay.
Okay. So all of your data suggests that crime is down, but we have a jail that is at or above capacity. So what those two things seem like they should correlate, right?
Yes, it does. I think that a lot of it is related to the proactive efforts that officers and investigators are using when we're dealing with calls for service or incidences that are specific to what's going on or to certain crimes in the area. But others could be things like fights, things to that effect, where those arrests are made. So not each one of them rise to the levels of felonies, but yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it's unfortunately a sign of where we're at, that we're just seeing just an increase of behaviors that are pushing us to the point that we have to arrest folks.
I guess it's still confusing though, because all of your different metrics are suggesting that behavior is lower, but we have more people in jail.
Catching more.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, okay. All right, I guess.
And misdemeanors, or I don't know the correct term, between not a felony, but still
Yeah.
an offense that you could be jailed for. So there are other crimes that Chief hasn't mentioned.
So for example, if there's an arrest for a domestic violence, but it's not a felony arrest, someone, obviously there's a bail aspect to it.
Yeah.
Or we may be holding them up to certain cases. And in some cases, there may be individuals who have been arrested and sentenced. However, their sentence may not rise to the level that we're going to send someone to state. It might be something that's, there's a time served, there's a formula that's added to it,
Sure.
that we may keep people in our own custody rather than sending them out to the state.
Do you think we're having more people stay, like, not get out on bail? Is that, like, or, I don't know, I'm just.
No, yeah, very, very good question. That's one of the things that we've asked. So when we see these numbers and these individuals, or we're housing more people. And one of the concerning parts of it, anytime someone's arrested, it's a concerning thing. But right now, our women's pod is filled to the max. We've actually got anywhere between 5 or 7 people that we have in other jails in other counties that we're paying for. Because, for example, there was the shooting that happened earlier this year, that there were 5 individuals that were involved in that. So before they go to trial, we don't want to keep everyone in the same facility, so we're moving people out to different facilities. So there's a lot of logistical play with these. But it is a rather concerning thing for us. When we do have arrests, we do work very closely, especially if they're misdemeanor arrests. We do work very closely with the city and the city prosecutors, as well as the judges, in looking at if those opportunities, they're bail opportunities, or where we can use bracelets or monitoring, things to that effect. So we're not aiming to keep people within the facility that it's not necessarily a violent crime. If they don't pose a risk, a flight risk or a safety risk to the community, we're doing our best to keep people out. But unfortunately, the level of offenses that folks have been arrested for, it's unfortunately where we're seeing the uptick.
Okay, interesting.
Chief, did you say that DUIs were up?
Yes, our DUIs are up.
So, some of these it may be at high occupancy, but there is significant turnover once someone's served 4 days, 3 days.
Yes, that can happen as well. And what I can do, Commissioner, is I can get you a list of the infractions of what folks are, and I can send that to the City Commission within another day or two.
I do think it'd be interesting, I'm going to say average length of stay. That might not be the right way to equate that. But I mean, I think that's kind of where Peter was going, if people are staying longer, not getting out on time. But I think that would be information to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have that readily available. I can have that to you ASAP.
Also the state had significant problems with their IT in the courts, and things just sort of bogged down for quite a while. And also, the state prisons are very full, and so sometimes there was a prisoner in Pottawatomie County who was in the Pot jail for 3 years and finally got to trial and was sentenced to time served. I mean, that's not what you want, having people, at that level. They might have been innocent, but, John, you've sat on the law board many years. Do you have any advice? It's certainly something we've discussed a number of times.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it come up and down, but this is a little strange where the stats are down, but the levels are up. And I know that the increase in the women's population, you've had to switch things around because obviously they're segregated and you've run out of room in one and having to move a lot of people. I think we're fortunate to have the low crime rate, and hence we've left with the same size jail for a long time. And I really just, and without doing the numbers, really can't tell, but really getting into specifically, as you said, are the things that we're getting just those that take longer to get through and that's what's happening to us, even though overall we're down.
I do know when I spoke about the proactive efforts that the department has been doing, when we saw those overdoses or the poisonings for fentanyl, we have taken a very, very proactive stance in that, and all individuals that were involved where we made those arrests have been arrested. So it's not necessarily, it may have been one incident in which somebody sold something to the victim, but instead of just going after the one person, we've tagged a chain of individuals connected to one specific incident. So there may be 3 to 4 arrests as related to things like fentanyl overdoses or poisonings.
Any other questions or comments for the director? Thank you very much for your update. I might add that, Director Pete, that I was at the center today to file a complaint of my own, and I was very impressed with the officer who assisted me.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll forward that through.
Our second item on the agenda tonight is discussing possible approaches to adopting a common consumption area ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is a discussion item tonight to discuss CCAs, common consumption areas. It's something allowed by state law that other cities have pursued. We've also pursued on a special event, per special event basis a few times over the years, but we've gotten some feedback from our districts to looking for a broader discussion, and we provided you all a background memo a few months ago. And the majority of the commission kind of wanted to discuss that further, so we scheduled this discussion item. So tonight, I'm going to give you a little background information on CCAs, talk a little bit about the differences between CCAs and special events that we do allow today per our Code of Ordinances, look at other CCAs in Kansas, provide you some recommendations and just on how we think we should continue the conversation, and then of course we're looking for input from you all tonight that could influence how we move forward. State law in Kansas governs that sale, possession, and consumption of alcohol. Cities are allowed to adopt specific ordinances or resolutions to allow alcohol consumption on public property. We have within our city code, since about 2012, a special events ordinance that allows what we would call special events with alcohol. And we have done that sparingly over the years, those special events with alcohol. We have done a few CCAs recently. We did a few last year, and then on your 2 meetings in September, you did adopt some event-specific CCA ordinances for some events in downtown that are going to be happening this October. The common consumption area, it's going to allow an individual to be walking in that public area. Most people think of a public street, public sidewalks, in a confined area to consume and possess alcohol. Within that CCA, you're going to define that area with a specific boundary, and that is only where alcohol can be possessed and consumed and sold. And I mentioned, it can be on any city property, such as like a city park, as well as public rights-of-way like streets and sidewalks. The common example that we talk about is our downtown and Aggieville business districts. There are a few differences between CCAs and special events. The primary difference as it relates to public streets, and this only recently changed in 2023, was that in a CCA you can have your street open to vehicular traffic or closed. With a special event, you have to close down the street, vehicles have to be removed, vehicles cannot be operating during that special event period. But with the CCA, you could allow vehicle traffic to continue to flow and then allow consumption along your sidewalks, for example. The duration is different too. Your special event is as described. You're looking at typically a 1 day, a few hours event that's happening on a specific day and time. CCAs, there's options there too. You can continue to do events just like we are doing in October for their downtown events, but you can also have ongoing common consumption areas for an extended period of time, daily, during certain hours, the CCA can exist, and those rules are posted in those areas. Locations, those are defined by ordinance where a city wants to allow a special event or CCAs to occur. In our Chapter 31, we allow special events with alcohol in Aggieville downtown, Blue Earth Plaza, City Park, and Twin Oaks. It's really up to you all how we want to determine CCAs moving forward. That'll be an area of discussion that we'll be looking for your input. The consumption of alcohol is a little bit different too. In special events right now, typically we've only seen the licensed caterer, right? So you have a person setting up in the middle of the event area, they're a licensed caterer. You can go up and purchase beer and alcohol, and then you can go throughout the special event area. It is possible, like a CCA or an immediately adjacent bar within that special event boundary can actually extend their premise. But we've just never seen that. Once we'll talk about it on the next slide as it comes to liability, why that's never really occurred. So most of the time, special events, you're going to see a licensed caterer in that area. The common consumption area, those adjacent drinking establishments can sell on their premise. And they can also sell in a non-contiguous area outside of their premise. So as an example, if you're having a special event, common consumption area downtown, and Tallgrass is one of the drinking establishments that is a part of that event, they could also set up a booth right outside of their event and serve their beer, as opposed to you having to actually go into the establishment indoors. Those areas are approved by the permit holder when the CCA is being created. Liability is the real sticking point, as I mentioned, as to why we haven't really pursued special events where the bar is extending their premise. The difference in a special event, that liquor liability, is if bars, say you have a district where 7 bars are participating in that event and they're potentially extending their premise. All 7 bars are liable for any violations of liquor law that happen inside those premises and out in the area. So if your bar is all the way over on one side of the district and someone's on the other side in the middle of the street and they are cited for underage drinking, all those bars are liable. Big reason why bars didn't want to participate in that way, and why we're really only seeing the licensed caterer who's there who holds that liquor liability. The difference in the CCA is that really, just as it is today, those drinking establishments only hold liability for any violations that occur inside their premise. It's going to be the permit holder in the common consumption area that is going to hold that liquor and civil liability within that outdoor CCA boundary, which you'd typically think of. And then in the special event too, you have all of the drinking establishments or bars that have that liability and the permit holder. So it's like everybody's liable. It's just kind of a big double hit. And it's been one of the reasons why districts have really never wanted to pursue that. There are some benefits that, districts have why they want to pursue CCAs. The new reason that streets can remain open, that's something that is up to the governing body. Ultimately, you don't have to allow that, but districts can keep the streets open on an ongoing basis or for specific events, and then they don't share that liquor liability with the participants. There have been a lot of CCAs that have been adopted in Kansas. I think over 40 CCA ordinances across cities in Kansas have been adopted. They're very detailed and specific as it relates to the area, the characteristics of the area. A lot of you may be familiar with the Lenexa Public Market and that indoor city hall facility. That's very unique and way different than us looking at a downtown or Aggieville district, right? So you're going to look at the characteristics of the district and try and create certain rules and regulations that are within state law to ensure that that's a positive and safe environment. We've been kind of piecemealing CCAs as certain events, I think we're on our maybe third or fourth, as these events come up, we just adopt a specific ordinance for that event, and then, we move on. There isn't an ordinance like we have with special events that kind of governs all of our CCAs that are going to occur now and in the future. So if we are wanting to pursue CCAs more regularly, we would adopt a common consumption area ordinance. It would be codified into our code book that would spell out all those characteristics of when, where, how CCAs can occur, and then people would be able to apply for events or permits, however you all allow that to occur. A lot of cities who have pursued this have created work groups to provide recommendations to the governing body. There's a lot of people that are involved in these, not only potentially the permit holder in the city, business owners, residents, staff, the districts as a whole. Security and safety is a big thing. All of the examples that we're going to probably provide you of other CCAs in Kansas, those cities have their own city police department. So it's crucial, the coordination with the Riley County Police Department. We've already had those conversations, but that is just something that we need to consider. Working with RCPD on what that environment looks like, the enforcement in that area, the security plans in place to ensure that it is a safe and secure environment. So if, that is just one of the initial discussions that we're looking for input, is if the City Commission is wanting to explore CCAs in a variety of ways, and we would recommend that further collaboration with Riley County Police Department, looking at getting a work group of some of the people who would want to be involved in there. And we have a few slides here where we'd like to get your input, because that can really help guide the decision. We don't want to go have month-long conversations with, say, the Aggieville and Downtown District, and they come back and provide a recommendation to you all, and you say, well, we never wanted something like that in the first place. So that'll be important up front. Who we involve is important too. I think the key people right off the bat are Riley County Police Department and city staff, as well as those district representatives. Locations, where are you going to want these to occur? Even Aggieville and Downtown are really different districts in their makeup and their size, so those are things to consider too. You can allow CCAs in other public areas too, like city parks, and so that's something to consider as well. Duration is a big thing. Do you want this to be something like we've been doing, where it's just a special event? People who want to hold a permit, apply for specific days of the year, specific times. That ends, the CCA goes away after that, event is over, and then it goes back to the regular function of wherever that location is. That one is pretty common, but it is common to have kind of the ongoing, regularly scheduled, so it could be Thursday through Saturday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's just a hypothetical example, or where you have an ongoing certain days of the week all throughout the year, a CCA. So that's something we like to get your input on too. Who the permit holder is a really big thing, and I know we have members from Aggieville and Downtown here who may want to talk about this too, but whoever is the permit holder is who kind of bears that the liability and the cost of that liability, having the right insurance coverage available to hold that permit. If it's not, the city can hold that permit, or you could put that onus back onto whoever is really applying. So that could be an event planner, an organization, the district itself. The downtown example that you all adopted, that is Downtown who's holding the permit there. So they would be tasked with getting coverage, required coverage to hold the right insurance to meet that liability standard. If the city holds it, we do have some coverage. The city's insurance coverage does apply in this. We certainly, though, need to, just because we're covered under, we've reached out to our insurance provider, and we are covered under our current coverage, but we also need to have reasonable enforcement, reasonable rules in place to to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure it's a safe environment as well. From a civil liability standpoint, we're covered under the Kansas Tort Claims Act. And if you have questions about that, I don't have the answers. I'll defer to Jason or something like that, or we'll go to our city attorney's office and get more information there. That's really it. We can certainly open up to public comments, or you can start providing any initial input, and I'm happy to jump back to any of those slides. But really looking for feedback so that we can, if you want, start a work group. Understanding your timeline too is beneficial. When do we, if we want to have CCAs in a regular way, when do you want us back with an ordinance? Because that'll help us kind of determine, how long that's going to take. Because there will be some things that we'll need to do.
Yeah, I mean, interesting thing to look at, and actually I'm fairly open to the idea of doing it and even have the city have the liability, but there's a lot of nuances to this. Having been on the law board a long time, having been in Aggieville, meet with bar owners, with the police and everything going through it, a big thing has to do with underage drinking. And I know there's a lot of contention between the police and the bar owners is when clientele provide that underage drink, how much is the establishment enforcing versus how much can enforce? When someone first slides it over, if you jump on them, well, whose fault was that? And when you think about how we've done a lot of these patio areas now where you can get a drink and be in that area, because if someone gets a drink from an establishment that says common consumption and they're 2 blocks down with their drink and they give it to someone else, it's like, literally, that's not on the bar who served it. And currently today, they have to monitor that patio area. But if it's common consumption and they're just hanging out in the patio area with drinks they got from that establishment, now that it gets a little gray and that enforcement and how that drink ended up or that type of thing. So it's interesting. I almost see that as a bigger issue than the guy that's 2 blocks away.
I see what you're saying, but aren't those patios like legally an extension of the premises?
Right, but now you have to stay in that patio. If this
Right.
was there, you can be out and around the patio. And we can say that if you're just to step outside the patio, the establishment has nothing to do with it. But I don't know, to me, it just makes it a little grayer on how that,
We
how
have,
that works.
in the 2 CCAs that you all adopted for downtown, we've mirrored a lot of the requirements that we have in our special event with alcohol. So there are those provisions out there that, you have to have a wristband, you have to get your ID checked. One of the CCA laws is that, and this is a requirement that all CCAs would have to do, is that when you're serving, you have to serve in a distinct cup that has your organization on it too, so that you know where it came from. Non-alcoholic beverages have to be in a distinctly different type of cup so that people who are monitoring and enforcing have a little bit more understanding of what things are looking like. So those are some of the things that, we're going to look at and want to put
So
in
those
place to help
others-
that enforcement.
Like who's it, Topeka and the other one that has
Hayes.
Hayes, are they doing things like that with a wristband or something like that to identify when they're in that more wide open?
Yeah,
type
I'd
of
have to look
CCA.
at the wristband. I'm not necessarily sure how Hayes does it.
I don't know how you would do a wristband in downtown though, because it's like,
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
yeah, there's no like entry point or anything.
When it's a
like that.
special event, it's one thing, but when it's every day.
We do
that
require it
seems a
for the
little more-
events.
If the roads are still open,
Right, yeah,
It's,
that's what I mean, it's,
which to me sounds like a really bad idea.
I'm, like I said, I'm pretty open to it, but I also see the issues and think we should go through this process of getting groups together and getting the feedback on it.
I disagree, John. I think we have adequate ways for people to have special events, and they should have to sign up for those. I'm always troubled by the fact that we have to always talk about having alcohol at things to draw people in. I think there's many other things you could do, as you can see through all the coffee shops that have grown up throughout the town. Aggieville is of great concern to me, because after 10 o'clock at night, it's pretty wild down there. I don't want to see us not be one of the safe places to go to send your kid to college, that kind of thing. I think we've got it worked out so that if you want to have a special event, you sign up and we say, okay. To me, Aggieville, where kids could go in and buy a beer and then go out and hand it to their buddy who's only 17, that's just scary. And downtown, when I've talked to a number of business owners down, and they're not particularly enthusiastic about it. And one told me that Kansas City, the art district that had something like this going, turned into a drunken free-for-all, and now all of the art galleries are requiring that people are members before they can go in, because it just got, I know Topeka's very much trying to lure people to North Topeka and downtown, but I don't think we need this extra push to get people. We've got the pop-out places, and those are really wonderful. I think we've kind of got it covered now. And I don't really want to spend a lot more time on this.
Jamie?
I mean, I think we all knew I was going to maybe disagree with Karen on that one. I mean, I'm very excited about these. I think this is tourism. This is engaging individuals. We're talking about additional sales tax revenue. Just, I picture, and yes, I mean, Karen will say, is it silly that we have to have alcohol to entice people to do things sometimes? Yes, sometimes that's the way that goes. I know when I throw an event at work, I have to have cookies to entice people. I mean, like there has to be something for people if they want to go down there and experience it. But I do envision it that, maybe for downtown Manhattan, maybe businesses are staying open later for shopping and people can walk around with a drink while they're waiting on a table. I just see this creating a positive atmosphere, additional revenue streams, more tourism. I do think if we're going to do it, we have, in my opinion, we need to be comfortable with whatever area that we are designating. We make it very clear. I would hate to get us in a situation where somebody steps 1 foot over the line and then they're being dinged automatically and getting a ticket. So I hope we can work cooperatively with the police department on saying, hey, you're outside of the bounds, get back in. I also think we need to keep the hours as broad as possible. Or, I mean, I'm in favor of anytime an establishment down there is selling alcohol beverages, so anytime they're open, just so that people aren't messing up inadvertently, not knowing that, oh, I didn't know it ended at 10 and it's 10:01 and now I'm in trouble because I broke this. So, I mean, I think we keep it on normal business hours that are open down there. I just know from traveling, from going places, it is something that's nice when you're in a place and you can move around. The streets being open do not bother me as much, but I'm not expecting ragers in the street. I'm, in my mind, thinking people are grabbing a drink and might be walking around while they're waiting for their table. And I guess in my mind right now, I'm thinking downtown Manhattan, it might be great for us to experiment with an area, start in an area. I also think from Aggieville standpoint, we are planning to do a lot of redevelopment in the area that makes, I think the changes that we're going to make are going to make it a lot easier to incorporate CCAs. But I mean, I'm a fan of moving forward. I do think we should start and look at a specific area. And I'm also a fan of the city holding the liability on that. I think there's probably not a whole lot of difference between somebody having a beverage or not from a liability standpoint, I guess. If somebody's in the street and something happens to them, whether they're holding an alcoholic beverage or not, that probably doesn't change a whole lot. So that's where I'm at on it.
I going backwards across your comments. I disagree. People are already angry about the impact of the tort restrictions. If the city, if the sewer system fails and their house is flooded, if they hit the pothole and their car is damaged, if somebody is physically harmed as a consequence of drinking, I think that and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the difference between civil liability and accidents, and, I don't know. But I think should something happen and where the city is implicated as the permit holder and tort law protects the city so that no claims are eligible, I think that's problematic. I also think having open carry all day long when restaurants and bars are open is not a great idea. I think there are a lot of people who are too easily tempted by alcohol and by the novelty of being able to move around. I'd like to know what is the support for this, how it divides among people in the retail trade as opposed to people in the bar and restaurant trade. You talked about walking around and doing some shopping while you're waiting for a table. I can't imagine that somebody at Furnish would be really happy if someone spilled beer on their items.
Yeah, but I would say they probably wouldn't be happy if somebody spilled soda, a coffee, or, that's where, in trying to differentiate, yes, it's an alcoholic beverage, sorry, Susan.
I just, I think there are people who have merchandise that could be easily damaged, that this could happen more frequently than someone spilling coffee or soda or something.
Just to piggyback on that item, and Jared, if you're aware of some of these details too, you can chime in. If you're in a CCA in a district, you do have to claim whether or not you're part of the alcohol coming into your store. So the furnishing store that you talked about would have to actually file with the state whether they're part of the CCA or they're not. And if they're not, then they can shut the alcohol off at the door and not even allow it in. If you allow it in, you do take a responsibility in the CCA to manage it appropriately. Just wanted to make that distinction for you all, because you, as a retailer, you can opt out of being in the CCA and not allow that individual who's perusing your window to come in with alcohol. They would have to dispose of that before they came into your store.
That leads me to a question. What if you're like a used stop and you sell alcohol? Can you go in there and buy a six-pack and walk out the door and pop it open? I mean, obviously, you don't have anything about or is that just something for us to set up as part of the procedure?
The boundaries are clearly within your
Well, let's say they're in the boundary.
Right, and you do have to consider uses like that when you set those boundaries up. Some may be more problematic. Again, as a retailer or as a store owner, you got to think about who's managing it, the hours at which the district's in place, and the resources you're going to put in place to help either keep it out or manage it while it's in your store.
Yeah.
That example, Commissioner, my understanding wouldn't be allowed. So the state still defines what type of groups can provide alcohol, and that's the licensed caterer. They throw out things like
Yeah, that's right. You went through the
microbreweries or something like that, and then there's the adjacent drinking establishment.
Okay.
So you cannot, another example, if you're having a common consumption area or a special event in Blue Earth Park, you can't walk across the street to that liquor store in Blue Earth Place, grab a six-pack, walk back over to the park and drink it. You'd be violating the CCA because you didn't get it from the licensed caterer or the licensed drinking establishment.
How would we differentiate that? I mean, I guess we can put that in our ordinance, that if you are going to be exercising the CCA, it has to be in a branded.
Yeah.
That is part
That's
of
the state law.
That's part of state law.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
if someone was walking around with unless you have like a licensed caterer who is just selling beer through that's in a can.
So, yeah.
But if you don't have a licensed caterer and you have the CCA where you just have drinking establishments and someone's just walking around with a Coors Light can, that would be likely in violation of the CCA law and the ordinance because it's not coming from a cup that's distinct from that.
So I'm thinking of we got two breweries downtown, and they both have the cans. You can buy a can retail, that would not be allowed in a
Correct.
CCA.
But they could pour it in a cup.
They could pour it in a glass or in a cup and then you,
Well, actually, I mean, if you're buying a can
yeah.
that's from Manhattan Brewing Company and it's got the Manhattan Brewing Company can, that's distinct, according to the ABC.
So if you
So if I walk into a Manhattan Brewing Company
Yeah.
and I go into that little fridge there, and I think they got those beers with the little
yeah.
purple thing that says Manhattan Brewing Company, that would be a distinct thing because you would know someone got that from Manhattan Brewing Company.
Now, they do sell them in retail locations outside. I guess that's just something that
And that's where,
a
again,
very-
there's a boundary,
yeah.
right? There's a boundary that we've created for the CCA, and part of the CCA and the permit is a plan on how you're going to ensure that alcohol isn't leaving and alcohol isn't coming in. That's just one of those things that, yeah, could someone have their backpack and bring some beer? Sure, yeah. And it
Someone
might,
take
it
their
might
cup
not get-
home and make their cocktail and walk down?
It is possible, but that's why you're creating a plan within that permit that someone is accountable to ensure that those things aren't occurring to the best.
But I
their
think,
ability.
you know, I'm not against having people have the ability to drink downtown and that kind of thing. And I think by doing this special event, we have to all take a little step back and say, okay, this is what somebody wants to do. They want to have third Thursdays, and that's fine. And Gina's written us a thing, and we sign off on it. And, you know, the liability, while we are okay, if we have several of these things come, you can't imagine that our insurance company isn't going to walk away. I mean, I think the city's kind of in a bad shape liability-wise, and the people I've talked to in downtown Manhattan are not enthusiastic about this, but they're not bar owners.
Karen, I think, you know, I definitely hear what you're saying, and something that I would want us to have is kind of a goal, right? Like, why are we considering this instead of just staying with the special events? I do understand there is some administrative red tape to get through to have a special event, but what is the benefit to having a CCA versus there is a risk.
So what do you think it is? I mean,
Right, and you know, I don't know. So my initial thought about this was that it would be downtown because I do think that it would perhaps promote a little bit. I mean, I don't know. There's already a lot of overconsumption in Aggieville on the weekends, but would it promote more? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of cities that allow this, but they're kind of known for the places you go to party. So I don't know. I just want us to have kind of a goal and a purpose for having this instead of just having it because.
Commissioners, may I, Dennis and Gina, are you planning to make any public comments? May I suggest that we hear from them and then continue our discussion? Are we able to do that? And Director Pete, perhaps you'd like to weigh in as well. But if one of you would like to, we will open the meeting for public comments at this time.
Okay, so we haven't been able to talk about this yet as a group, and I am super in favor of getting a work group put together because this is a very nuanced thing in Kansas, but also in downtown and Aggieville. And I know that I say this often, but I would like to be considered as a separate district when we are discussing this, just because there are nuanced differences. I think it's definitely fair to say that we've probably all been.
Jared didn't set the timer. I was eyeing him. I was giving him a hard time. I have it set on my watch. I don't know if that counts.
We were debating whether or not it's actually public comment. It's kind of like a consultant that you have when you're asking them to give a presentation. We don't time them.
Oh, good. No time limit.
Or an applicant who comes from a developer standpoint that, you know, they're not timed. They're giving you all information and feedback about what it is you're considering. They're somewhat the applicants themselves because they're looking to you all to give guidance and direction. So You all can make that decision, but it could easily be argued that way.
I don't see a crowd, so.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was trying to give Jared a hard time, and Gina caught that.
Thank God. Somebody else.
I'm trying to relinquish my rights as the timer. It's just not working.
So I think it's probably safe to say that we've all been in a common consumption area when we've been on vacation. I mean, Bentonville, Fayetteville, places in Colorado, or you, what's that?
Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, Charleston, Athens, Atlanta. I mean, they're everywhere. And there's very cool. I have lots of pictures I've taken from traveling across the country, and I hope to be able to share them in a work group like setting of how cities and districts create these unique boundaries without having to put up barricades and closing the street. We're talking about folks who come in for football games or just to come and visit. We've been trying to create a regional center out of Manhattan, have a regional draw. I think this is just another enhancement to that. I would say on the sort of, I don't want to argue this point, but it is a point, in fact, that Promenade on Points has been going on for 20-something years, and it is held in retailers. They sign up, they pay to have that wine poured and enjoyed in their retail locations. Back in January of this year, I sent out, as I always do every year, a survey to the district-wide, and I just ask a bunch of different questions. One of the questions, very not specific, more of a general question, was, are you in favor of this type of common consumption area where we don't have it set up around a special event? And that went out to everyone. So that's restaurants, retailers, engineers, attorneys. That's everybody in the district but not residents. And it was 87% in favor of having a common consumption area that was well established and in place year round. Back in June, when Jason informed me that this discussion was coming up, I sent out another survey to just our licensed establishments and venues, like where licensed caterers are, and there was only one business who was not in favor of it, but it wasn't because they aren't in favor of a CCA, it's the type of business that they are. They don't produce a lot of beer and a lot of quick cocktails, it's more of an experience type business, so they just wouldn't participate. In the last month, I've had some one-on-one conversations specifically with retailers since talking with Jason about how a retailer will have to opt in or opt out, or anybody can opt in or opt out, and started having those discussions and asking, how would this work for you? Are you in favor of this? Are you okay with putting a sign on your door that says no alcohol past this point? And while it is just a straw poll, and I'm definitely willing to knock on all the doors as I always do, they're more in favor of doing this. They see it just as a benefit. It's a nice way to just kind of, I think we can all agree that downtown is not going to turn into a hopefully raging, crazy location. We're pretty adult-centered, family-centered. Like a lot of tourist locations, it's just something that's you just do, and it's sort of reasonable. And I've been to Bentonville. That's where my daughter lives. I go there. She lives in Fayetteville. I go there every other month, and we literally walk in and out of restaurants and bars and shops and farmers market and all the places, just reasonably drinking and turning our plastic or compostable, actually, cups back into a cool little thing that's on every light pole, and they get reused. I know we don't have the facilities to be able to do that here in Manhattan, but cities are doing this, and they're doing it because it does generate sales tax. It's good for economic development and the like. I would like to have that work group. I do think this is a very nuanced kind of situation. I do want to hear what everybody has to say, especially RCPD. And I want to continue to have the conversations with more specific information when I go to my businesses and talk to them. I've had to be kind of vague because I'm not 100% sure what we're doing. So that's really would like to have good conversation.
Since it isn't public comment, can I ask Gina a question? Do you have a timeline in your mind? I'm assuming there's quite a bit of work. If we move forward with this in downtown, that you would have to be involved in, not just your business owners. Like, from a target standpoint, do you have a time frame in mind?
I mean, we've been wanting to do this for years, so the sooner the better. I think the other thing that's important to note that Jared didn't note, just kidding, is there's a lot of cost involved in setting up a special event that you have to close the streets down. There's a lot of labor involved. There's this crazy collaboration of volunteers to try to get barricades picked up from the street department and set up, and then we have to have, there is no such thing as a volunteer anymore, so they're all paid. It's a very expensive endeavor to have to close the streets down. Now, that does not mean that we don't want to have events where we close the street down, because we do. We still want to have those. But it's not the only way that we want to do this. We want to have this available for, I mean, it's a draw. It just is. And I will get data on that for you so you have it. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Good evening, Dennis Cook with Aggieville. And to answer maybe some of the questions you're talking about it turning into a bit of a free-for-all or things like that, I would think you would do it in the if you've been up to a club level at K-State for a football game. What they're going to do up there is, whether if it's me, I mean, you pick somebody that old. You've got to have a wristband to have a drink, and and I think that would kind of help. Some of the questions you had about walking up the street and handing your drink off to somebody else. They need to be checked and have a wristband. Otherwise, both people have really opened themselves up to making a big mistake there. So. That's how the K-State does it, and it works fine for them. I mean, because what they'll allow you to do at K-State is you can, I can go up to the counter and I can get 2 drinks, which just helps move everything along. But they're just going to tell you that whoever you're giving that to has had to already checked in and gotten a wristband. So I think there's an easy way to control that. And yeah, I don't think, we're looking at, for Aggieville's sake, something that just turns this thing into, big events all the time. There are events that we'd like to do. We have events that want to come into Aggieville, things we want to do. But the special event permit that we have to go through right now is it is too costly, and what will happen is you'll have an individual business who will just take a look at it and just say, well, I guess we're not going to do that because you can't make any money doing it that way. And the way we've done that before, when we've talked about allowing to have the other bars who are contingent, who could sign on, and they're part of that. Again, then that liability side of, if somebody gets cited, everybody gets cited. And that will stop it immediately in its tracks. People just aren't going to do that. But I think and Commissioner Minton, what you mentioned is maybe just a little bit of a consistent time. At this point, we've talked about this, and most of the the on-premise establishments that we've got have spent a lot of money and time in creating an atmosphere better than maybe the guy down the street. You know, that's what they want, is they want to be a draw. It isn't overly advantageous to everybody to have this going on all the time, but also at the same time that we take a look at it, and it's, you know, when we do have busy weekends and things like that, you know, you do have to look at a capacity problem sometimes, and it would be easier to handle people a different way. But, you know, but going into a specific cup, a specific way to handle that drink, you know, it doesn't make it a free for all. You know, I don't see that at all. I do still think that there might be some, you know, occasions where you've got an event, and when you do that, I would recommend for us is that, you know, that's when you would really close the streets, and you know what you've got, and, you know, that way it becomes a very obvious event. But I do agree, I think it would be great to have, you know, maybe some consistent time where you can just say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go from, you know, from 7 to, you know, whatever time on these evenings that make that possible while the traffic's still moving. And right now, on Fridays and Saturday nights, we're not moving traffic through Aggieville. And so I think, you know, but we're still not having people walk around the streets because we still have cars parked. So this would still be a sidewalk thing. And I think this would just allow, you know, when we get a lot of visitors in town, I think that would help out a lot. And we haven't done as many things, hardly, as we'd like to do, just because it's been cost prohibitive and it's been too cumbersome to do. And I think we're way behind, you know, a number of cities in the state with something like this. I think it'd be beneficial.
Dennis, what would fake patties look like to you with the CCA?
Well, you know, we get that question quite a bit. You know, what would it take to get it back into Aggieville? You know, get it off of Raton Street. And one of the things I've said repeatedly on that is I said, well, first off, we would have to, you know, we'd have to have that would not be a special event permit. If we had a common consumption where we could shut that down and open up the streets to that, that is something we could definitely take a look at. That doesn't mean you're not going to still have minors who are going to be looking to go someplace else, you know, just because they know there's going to be a presence
Right.
in Aggieville. But for a lot of people, the draw to that would be Aggieville, and it would be a lot more fun for them, and I think it would be very controlled. I'm not advocating for that at this point, though.
No?
I think there's advantages and disadvantages, but I think there's you know, maybe, you know, you can't just say, well, which we've heard before, not from this director, but we've heard before is, we're going to kill it, we're going to stop it. Well, no, you're not. That's not going to happen. So, you know, the reality of it is let's get a handle on it.
Dennis, I was just trying to clarify. Were you saying you were more in favor of, I wouldn't say special events, but maybe more restricted timeframes and a wristband system?
Yeah. You know, they said, you know, for a lot of our businesses, you know, they've put a lot of time and effort and money into their establishment, and they'd rather have them in and out. This is an opportunity, you know, and obviously when we get past dinner time, we're not a shopping district, we're an entertainment district, and this would allow people who are, you know, to move around some, you know, and maybe not feel as confined. And I think there's some advantages to that, but I don't have a big contingent, you know, that's crying for that. But this would make things so much easier for everybody. But we would have to still go back and work with them to find out when they would be comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I could see Aggieville being a candidate for something that's more not all the time, like you were saying, because like, you know, yeah, the bars want people to stay in the bars, but we do have events down in Aggieville that people might enjoy to be able to go, say the homecoming parade.
Right.
And enjoy a beverage while they're watching the homecoming parade.
Yeah, you're 100% right there. Yeah, I mean, obviously, for us, there's no call for it on a Sunday or a Monday or a Tuesday or even a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
It's when you would get later in the week, and especially when you get around, maybe that aren't our events. So like a K-State football game, when you've got people who are wanting to experience everything instead of going, okay, well, I guess I'll go stand in line outside of this bar. I'm not even sure I like this bar, but this either means the line's the longest, it must be the best bar, or the line's the shortest, I can get in quicker, or they can get something. And I think, we would move people a whole lot better, and I think it would work out well for everybody.
Now, how do you envision the wristband distribution working? Would the individual bars manage that? I mean, or
Yes,
yeah.
That's the way I would see it, is that you need to go into someplace, one of the licensed establishments who've got people who are used to looking at IDs and all that stuff. You need to, even if I go, okay, I'm not going to settle into this bar, but this is the bar I went into, and this is where I got my wristband. But that's going to open me up to do anything else. But I would want that coming from a bar.
Yeah. And would you want it to? I would imagine we would probably want that to be consistent. Like everybody gets the same Aggieville wristband.
Correct. That's what I would think too.
Okay, because that then not just anybody can go buy 1,000 wristbands off Amazon and slap
Right.
them on. We would want it to be distinct.
Yeah, and there's ways of doing that.
Yeah.
Would we want that to be a different wristband every night, or you buy a wristband for September? Or when you go up to the place in the, asks for 2 drinks, as you said you do at the football stadium, do they ask you to bring in the person with the wristband to show that you're gonna take that other drink to?
Now, what they do is obviously they're policing that themselves. And so as they've got security walking around, if they see somebody with a drink, but they don't have a wristband, what they'll do at the stadium is they'll come up and let's say it could be Mayor Adamchak, and she's holding a drink that I bought her, but she never got a wristband. I mean, they're not going to arrest her.
Don't put me in more trouble.
So do you
So-
then envision Director Pete's people all wandering around Aggieville, making sure that people have wristbands that are drinking beer outside?
So,
Yeah, but
I do think all these conversations get us to show that if we're moving forward with any of these, we do need to have probably independent work groups, because these are very different scenarios that I think they're going to have to play. Because I do think, Karen, like there's that question with the wristband. I mean, the wristband situation opens up more and more of those. The expectations, I think, from our CPD would be potentially very different. So I think in moving forward, just through this discussion kind of helped me realize we aren't going to be able to do I'm going to say like a blanket CCA for all of those areas that's the same. And with that, then I think we should, I'll save my opinions till after.
But I think
I don't think we can
think
try
the
to
work
figure out
group
all the
idea is right.
details
Right.
tonight of how it's going to work.
Right.
I mean, these are good things to think about, but
I think the work group idea is right, and we're different than downtown or whatever. And your general attendee into Aggieville, they're doing it for camaraderie. They're looking, to be with friends. They're going to be in a bar. They're not going to be roaming around. So I don't think that what you're going to see is empty bars and loaded sidewalks. That's not really. That's not reality. What you'll see is instead of people, in line or thinking about, what else can I do? They've got this as an option for them, and that could even be while they're in line or while they're going to, take a move up the street because they know somebody else is up there. I don't see this as the French Quarter in New Orleans. I don't think that's reality for us.
Commissioners, so we're not voting on anything?
I think Director Pete wants to make some comments.
No, he's done. No.
Sir. Good evening, city commissioners, members of the public. Brian Pete with the Riley County Police Department. I just put together a few notes from our standpoint. The department is here to do. We don't want to. We want to maintain safety and security, not dictate what businesses should or should not be doing. So any discussions, whether working groups or anything like that, we would obviously have no issues with attending and to the likes of that thereof. But I will say that some of the things that have been mentioned again, Commissioner Opelt, you had mentioned something about, I think the draw and the historics and where other places have been. That might be one question to ask within the working group. I mean, did this place did they see an increase in their sales and their revenue? And would it even be a justifiable conversation? That is something that obviously the working group could tackle. So I would say, in advocating for my group, what's easier for everybody else always tends to be harder for my department and for the safety of my department. So I would be a big advocate within those working group meetings just to make sure that if one organization or one group doesn't want to do something and then, well, we can just let the police handle it and solve it, that's not going to be a satisfactory answer for me. So I will just say with the other two parts of it, and again, this is obviously a decision that is not going, there's so many different factors that it's not going to be solved tonight with any working groups will take some time. But what the issues of concerning for me is please, I just want to make sure that my department is not part of any liability in that that is a risk I am not willing to take because things are different with how things happen. And that is not my responsibility to counsel the city on its liability. You guys have attorneys and professional staff to do that. But from my standpoint, and I'm not saying that there will be, and I'm not saying there's CCAs that are out there that says law enforcement is involved, but those agencies are part of that city with that liability. I don't want any liability with something like this. I just want to make that abundantly, perfectly clear. And then again to that one with the enforcement and consequences to those enforcements. A lot of places you may have organizations, you may have entities that are doing things, and no matter how many times we may approach someone or say, hey, we need you to kind of change. There's two ways of looking at it. This might give the city or an organization an opportunity to try to change behaviors in certain instances or certain places. But at the same time, if the city is not willing to put teeth into the consequences, then it's all for nothing. So at that point, why am I out there enforcing things? But these would be conversations I would have in a working group setting should the commission work towards that. Again, we're here to work. We're here to do what we can to support the community at the same time. But my priorities are safety for this community, and my priorities are especially to make sure that my men and women go home. Thank you.
Brian, how many arrests did we make during fake St. Patty's Day last time?
That number eludes me right now.
Just generally.
We wrote more tickets because we were trying not to get to the arrest parts of it because we just didn't have the staff to maintain that. After what happened this year, we're looking at trying to increase a presence within, bringing in other outside entities to help us with these things because we often have repeat offenders that no matter what we do, say, or ask, they're just going to, and then when people see that we're not doing anything to them, then it just becomes more dangerous for us as how we interact. So I think that we were somewhere in the area of, during the daytime, it was primarily citations. There might have been a few arrests, 10 arrests or so, maybe, I don't know. But at night is where we had significant issues with behavior related from intoxication, especially.
And what did we do with those people because the jail's full?
We stuff them into the drunk tanks or into the holding areas, and then again that also brings up another liability issue for us because not for a discussion here within the city commission, but obviously it's a county thing. We're trying to get the county to help us or to consider
Expanding.
Expand.
Yes. No, I'm not against people having fun and having a drink and that kind of thing. I just think that what we've got right now probably is adequate and makes the Aggieville and Blue Earth Plaza and all those people think about, what they're going to do and how they're going to make sure it's safe and that kind of thing. And I know that the officers that are on patrol in Aggieville late at night really face some almost daunting activities that they have to deal with. And so I'm all for raising sales tax and that kind of thing, but I would like to see that doing this would really not just have people drink more, but have people attract people from outside of Manhattan, that might not come here. That's my thing. I'm not against having a glass of something in your hand and walking around, but I just think we probably can do that with what we've got. And so that's my point.
Jamie first.
Oh, yeah.
Beat you, Peter. And I do think, Karen, when you said it, that it's drawing more people to the community, I do think that's a significant part of it. Sometimes we can let fear and risk stand in the way of taking that next step forward and staying competitive with other communities in Kansas and really across the country. We have to stay competitive. This is, I'm going to say, a trend. I feel like that makes it sound like it's maybe going to change later, and it might, but I think this is the first step towards more revenue strategies, towards tourism. I do think we have to be, careful and cautious, and I honestly, from hearing both Aggieville business and downtown Manhattan speak and seeing how different it is, I think if we try to roll out two things, I can't imagine the police department trying to enforce two different rules in different areas all at the same time, or the community being able to understand, okay, on these days between these times in Aggieville, I can go outside with it, versus in downtown, I can go out with it on these times. I think the simpler we can make that, the better. And that's also a timing thing.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say, I think that kind of, all of these things kind of bring up the importance of let's have that discussion and explore all of these nuances. Obviously, we're not going to do that here. They are being asked for. I think we would be doing a disservice to not have that conversation. Now, one thing I did think about when when we talk about enforcement, we probably would now have to have a, I don't know, permanent, but increased presence in downtown, some way, form, some shape or another. If that's, having a couple of permanent bicycle cops or whatever on points, but that's two personnel that you now have to, two more personnel that you have to take off patrol or whatever and have them in that area for those times. So, that's something else that we need to consider, is that extra cost.
And if I may say, just potentially from my standpoint, my part to be in what I envision our role in any working group would just simply be doing what we can to accommodate, and then warning of trying to figure out what consequences could be.
Yes.
And then trying to find out what the unintended consequences could be, and then just bringing those points up. If there's something that comes up that I think is absolutely going to be harmful or to the department and actually even to the city, I'll make sure I say something. But my role in this one, again, I would try to keep a low background.
Yeah, and you made a really great point about consequences and violations. We have to have consequences, otherwise we might as well not even have any rules. And those have to be enforceable and consistent. So that is where I would really want your expertise, is saying, here's how we can enforce this and here's how we cannot enforce this.
Yes, sir. And again, yeah, and from my standpoint, willing to do whatever the city commission needs me to do, and then as well as to what it is that the business owners are looking to try to do, and then how is it the department can accommodate them to the best way without increasing anything, any drains on the department itself, on the city or on the county. And that's my biggest. And again, moving forward, one of the things I was going to mention was we're getting ready to start our budget discussions early. And my whole intent is to ensure that knocking on wood, I don't want to say anything publicly, but my intent is to make sure when I come to talk to the law board about the budget is going to be extraordinarily, my ask is going to be low. That's my hope and my plan. We'll see what shakes out. But again, any work group or conversations, we would just have to see how that might add to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would point out the Aggieville Station, police station is not cheap. What we pay, the rent's pretty considerable. Are we-
That part of the rent, I think that we do have an understanding or a memorandum with the property owner.
Okay.
As far as how that goes, but we are looking to try to upgrade it and then install some more safety features to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still where I'm at the beginning, that I'm open to it. I think we need to go through the process, and I think we'll get a lot of answers to these questions and figure out the right way to do it. Again, with the liability, I agree with Jamie. If someone's drunk and they have the drink with them, or they slam one down before they leave the bar because they have to get out the door, I don't see much difference in that. And as far as the minor part, I really like going after the minor and the person who gave him the drink. Those are the two that I really like going after. Interesting on the increased enforcement. I mean, maybe at the beginning, I think it's interesting too, is a lot of things that the Aggieville people complain about. They said, if you really are underage, you want to get a drink, you go to those bars outside Aggieville who don't have the sophistication to check the IDs and everything else, and you'll be able to get it out over there. Your fake ID will really work outside of Aggieville. And Aggieville is a tough place to get that to work because those folks are trained on how to look at it, and they spend a lot of money on cameras and on bouncers and on all that type of thing.
I would like to see some more hard information, Gina, in terms of the cost of the special event permits and getting together your volunteers. I'm going to say, and I'm very ambivalent about this, I appreciate you made a nice argument for this being part of increasing tourism. Somehow, I don't think that Manhattan, and I admit we haven't taken this risk yet, Jamie, but I think that Bentonville and Savannah and Atlanta and Denver and Las Vegas and New Orleans have a few other things drawing people to those locations that we're not likely to have anytime soon.
Just Fayetteville and Bentonville are pretty similar. Yeah, I mean, I'm
But
trying to
if-
compare us.
If we're going to talk, you better come up to.
Well-
It's definitely not trying to compare us to Atlanta or Denver or Vegas. Fayetteville is a college community, and it works really well for them. And I will definitely get some data, call communities in other states and communities here in Kansas and find out as much as I can about how it works or doesn't work. I mean, I want that data too. I am the person who turns over every rock.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Information is going to be key. The work groups, I think we've heard a consensus tonight, ready to move forward with that. One key piece of information, construction in these areas is going to be a significant factor in how we roll some of this stuff out. With what we've got planned in Aggieville in the next 3 to 4 years, that'll definitely be part of the topic for the work group to work. And really, when we look to Riley County Police Department, we are unique. When a governing body in another city says they want something and they tell management to do it, police department's part of that. Here, we're gonna have to ask, and we're gonna have to get an understanding between the law board and the city in the event those things are expected. Because it was made clear to me in our discussion with the insurance carrier, Manhattan, you're unique. You've got a different threshold you're gonna have to talk about within your community with respect to or just Riley County, or police response and police oversight. So these work groups are gonna surface a lot of these issues. We'll bring those back to you all, but you make really good points, topics that we've brought up a lot internally, and we'll assemble these work groups and start putting together that info.
When you're saying work groups, Jason, are you talking about multiple based on location? Do we need to,
Based
Real-
on what I heard tonight, we will separate downtown and Aggieville. Even internally, before we got here, we were hearing it from Riley County Police Department, Aggieville, and downtown. And I do think they're separate. But I also, I threw in the construction side of Aggieville just because Morrow is about ready to be under
Yep,
construction
yep.
for over a year. You know, and that would be, I think, in most people's minds where you would do a CCA in Aggieville or right off 12th Street. 12th Street's going to start construction next year. Morrow's going to start construction more than likely in 2026. So those have to factor into our discussions too.
I think just for the efficiency or for people's time, I was fine with starting these with the downtown Manhattan work group, getting that going, figuring out who really needs to be in that as the first option, but I don't want to, I also don't want to delay things if it really needs to both start now.
I was thinking the same thing, but then, you know, when Dennis said, you know, hey, we could really do some cool things with this, we might want to start both of them, but also I do want to consider the consistency. You know, now they are very separate districts. So, you know, having different rules in downtown and Aggieville could potentially work just because of how they're separated geographically. But again, the enforcement, the education, that might be a challenge. So that's just something that we'd want to talk about with those groups.
And we're fine diving into work groups for both districts, bringing back information. You can give us further direction at that point in time if you'd rather focus on one or over another, or separate the two topics. We want this topic for this district, this topic for that. I mean, we can get into that, but let us look at both. Let us meet with the groups and bring back some summaries and some data for you all.
Are we going to have, how's that, I mean, will we do like open app, will people be able to apply to be on those groups?
I would rather you not
Okay.
appoint steering committees. It just creates a whole nother level of government
Sure.
that we have to follow. As staff, we'll engage with both districts and RCPD. If one of you would like to be, if one of you want to appoint a commissioner to this, you're welcome to. But at this point in time, I didn't envision involving the public appointed by you all.
Yeah, I can see that.
I would agree, and I think that extends the time to be working on this, because we'd have to have an application and opportunity. As Jason said, there's a lot of other regulations that would have to be mandated. I think we can look at this as more information gathering, engaging with key stakeholders, and I don't know, maybe the city could provide us with a list of individuals or organizations that they intend to approach, and if we had any additional people that we thought would be really essential, perhaps suggest that they be included. But
And I would just reiterate, right now, I think we engage with the two districts. We bring back information. You want us to head down a more detailed path with
okay.
businesses and outside groups. We're happy to do that, but let's get to a framework where we can at least agree to move forward on. And then if you want more involvement, we can do that.
That's fine.
That would be my recommendation.
I think that the memo you provided is very helpful in terms of laying out what some of the considerations are. And, you know, some of it is really getting in the weeds in terms of the cups and cleanup and maintenance, and that's not for us to spend our time on. There are people who know this stuff better than we do. So is the commission okay with asking the city to move forward with its discussions with these two business groups? We haven't mentioned the West Side businesses. I'm trying to rack my brain and determine how many bars or restaurants are over on that side of town, and there aren't that many right now.
Just a point of clarification, common consumption areas are about getting onto public streets and public roads. Most of your business associations like that are encompassed on private property.
Okay.
So even if they wanted to come out on their sidewalks and their parking lots and do what they want to do, they're not approaching the city to do that from a CCA standpoint.
All right, thank you for that.
Yep.
Do you need additional guidance at this time?
I don't believe so.
Thank you.
We'll create the MHK CCA WG working group.
Can we throw a few more letters in there?
And well, then we'll have two of them. One will have ABA attached and then DMI. So we'll let you know the official acronym once we've established it, though. Thank you.
And Dennis and Gina, thank you for your input and your suggestions. Jason, do you have anything for us today?
Real quick, we're about out of meetings until Danielle comes, so that'll be good for her to get an opportunity to give you all a briefing soon. MRC luncheon, October 2nd. I think Jamie, John, and myself will be there. Joint city, county. We have canceled quite a few in a row. If you have topics, please let us know. That is scheduled for October 17th.
Can
I
I
think it's really important that we do those,
And
Sure.
just to touch base.
Yep.
I'm on the board of the Conza Prairie Community Health Center, and I suggested to Danny that would be an opportunity to be able to present to both the county and the city in terms of their new operations, what their priorities are. And I can shoot her an email and suggest that she get in touch with someone.
Is that a topic you all want to host as a city?
Sure.
Okay. And it's Conza.
Conza Prairie Community Health Center. I'll
Okay.
send your information tomorrow.
Thank you.
We just met a week or two ago, and she was planning to have two separate meetings, and I told her that would be a good one.
We are at the county. We will send those items over by October 10th, but it is on the 17th. Intergov next month, October 28th. Grant was telling us a little bit more about that. Sounds like the transitions to the county next year, so that'll be a different venue starting the first of the year. Roger Schultz Community Park, we've got that groundbreaking ceremony October 4th. I've got Peter, Karen, and Jamie heading to that. So we will notice
You
that
notice I
one.
said I couldn't be there.
Oh,
I told Laura
I'll let her know.
that Jamie's gonna be there.
Yep, Peter and Jamie.
Peter and Jamie, right.
So we won't need to notice that, so I will let them know.
Will one of you like to make remarks in our stead?
Oh,
Yeah,
Sure.
more than likely.
Remarkable.
We'll drag him up there, kicking and screaming.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Flip a coin and let Jason know.
You're going to arm wrestle, actually.
What?
So we're going to arm
I'll
wrestle.
let you win. ATA ribbon cutting is next week too, on the 1st. Is that something that we need to notice or anything? It's just a social, okay.
Should be fine. I think if it's our event, and
Yeah,
it's a
it's-
groundbreaking,
Starts at 4.
we don't want you gathering up, doing stuff, so. There were a couple items mentioned at the Intergov, had to do with the childcare accelerator and our levy, both involving potentially Senator Moran's office, which those dates were kind of floated around, and then their office approached us afterwards and said that may not work. So we'll keep you posted on when and if those surface. I know Senator Moran's trying to make a lot of things happen here in the next couple weeks locally. If they do surface and they do hit the calendars, we'll make sure we inform you all about attending those and let you know the time and the place. But
Just,
right now, they're both tentative.
yeah, just to clarify, he's been invited to attend the groundbreaking for the Child Care Accelerator. I think they're calling it something different now.
Yeah, it's a long name. I
It's-
just keep calling it the Child Care
Yeah,
Accelerator.
but
so.
that'll be happening soon. I think Vern said possibly the month of November.
Yeah, we both said October 9th, and Kristen came up to us and said, that may not happen.
Yeah,
So that's why we're hoping to get it done here in October.
first they gotta do a budget.
That's all.
Okay. I meant to recognize at the beginning of the meeting that we received information today about the interim director of the Discovery Center, Stephen Bridenstine, appearing on a segment on the Weather Channel talking about the Conza Prairie. And they have a segment called Best in State, and he did a really nice job. I was able to watch that video this afternoon, and I just want to congratulate him and the staff of the Discovery Center for that great visibility for our community.
Yes, we've shared it out on social media. You all have it. It is a great segment. We're very proud of what he's done, represented the Kanza and the Discovery Center very well.
Jason, the October 8th meeting is looking very light on the planning agenda. Is it just CVB?
It is at this.
Not to say just CVB, but is Marcia our only speaker that night?
The topic of the downtown garage may accompany that.
Is it possible for that to go on a different night? I'm
Yeah,
just thinking
absolutely.
if it's one
If you wanted
topic,
to-
I don't know how everyone feels about taking October 8th off.
Well, we've had a lot of discussions about establishing metrics and things like that. This might be a good opportunity
yeah.
to bring that up early, before, because we have to do their contract in December. That might be.
Yeah, we are working on that internally. We will be in touch with all the entities that receive TGT. We would anticipate a work session or a discussion with you all between now and the end of the year as to how to format those. A couple topics have come up: performance grants versus annual contracts. Performance grants are something we typically do with economic development recipients, where they are out there performing at a certain level and receiving these benefits. Grants are annual contracts are what we've traditionally done without a whole lot of performance measures identified. So we'll put together some summaries and bring those back to you. We're not gonna be ready by October 8th to do that. So if you want to move her update and that topic out a little bit and relieve yourself of that evening, it'd be an opportunity.
I do feel like I turned me off. I do feel like we will end up going there in the conversation on the 8th. So if we're not prepared for it, with that being said, I know there's a lot of other dates that everyone's gone, I think, in October, so maybe it won't work. I just was noticing that it felt light and.
I heard you loud and clear, measurable outcomes on both CVB
Yes.
and the chamber. And where do we start, how do we start drawing those up? I mean,
Yeah, I like, if we're ready to have that conversation on October 8th, I think that's a great use of time.
And I mean, we don't necessarily, I don't know if we need to have anything prepared by city staff, but I mean, it could just be a more of a discussion with CVB on the kinds of things that they're able to do. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got several entities funded out of transient guest tax. ABA and DMI being both CVB, the MAC, and the Wolf House. And again, you've got 13 agencies funded out of social services and special alcohol. And again, you're how many, sorry? Total between the two, yeah. So you've got a different approach there. You've got a $500,000 set aside for those types of reviews on an annual basis, and then contracts are essentially commitments to those entities on an annual. You want to, do you just want to talk about transient guest tax recipients that evening? Or do you want to look at comprehensively how you're handling these relationships through either special alcohol, social services, transient guest tax, or economic development?
I mean, we do need to start having those conversations. I mean, I initially was advocating for us to take the night off, but if we're gonna be here, we can put some, have some more discussions.
Jared, when are you guys bringing that back? CISFAB, is that in November?
Yeah, it's usually the second legislative meeting in November is when we'll be bringing back recommendations from CISFAB.
And that would actually work better for us to get options for you all to consider from a TGT annual contract examples and ideas. The contracts themselves have been the same for a long time, and they do need to be brought up to a standard. But I will also tell you, the way we administer even the ABA or the DMI annual contract, it's different than the way we administer other contracts. And it can get frustrating to finance, who's processing receipts from these two individual groups, but yet we're not processing necessarily receipts from these other entities. And it's like, where do you want us to be? ABA and DMI are constantly sending us paychecks that they issue and expenses they have within their districts, but yet on this side of the coin, money's just going out and it's part of an annual review. So you've got discrepancies in their staff time associated with all these approaches, but we've got it moved throughout the organization doing different things. So there was a concept of, do we just comprehensively look at how those contracts are situated, how we're holding anybody accountable at this point, which we are, but yet others are just going through a different process. Do you want to streamline that into a consistency or leave it the way it is? That could be moved to November as well. I just don't think we're going to be ready to talk to you comprehensively by October 8th.
Okay.
What if we just looked at the chamber and CBB?
Yeah.
Because those are sort of,
Sure.
They're the big
and,
ones.
because the special alcohol and the others, they bring in hordes of people and have to get organized. But, I don't even quite know where to start with measurable outcomes. And so I think a discussion wouldn't hurt. Yeah. Just to hear what you all think,
I'm sure there are industry standards that, Marcia has brought data from CVB in the past. I would imagine there are others certainly she talks about occupancy rates, she talks about the number of conferences they've brought in, and, probably there are other entities that have similar standards. And it may very well be that a lot, even of the social service agencies, are keeping track of that information for other funders that they have. And we've just not asked for that information before. And part of it has to do with the funding mechanism. I think from what the little you just said, or the brief that you just said, I think it really does warrant us looking at whether we should continue doing contracts and grants or have this solely be performance-based grant with reviews. So
I'm just adding this as information. I am not supporting this at all, but at the Regional Planning Organization last week, Council Grove has told their Chamber of Commerce that the businesses, that the city will not support it because so many of the businesses say that they have their own webpage and their own this and their own that. Anyway, just saying the sort of change of thought, which never kind of occurred to me, but just for what it is.
So it looks as if we will maintain the October 8th meeting.
We'll let the chamber know you plan on diving into that contract and the CBB contract, and we'll leave it at that for that evening.
Sure.
Getting a lot of head nods. Thank you.
And Jason, could we have the past history of the Eco Devo dollars and where they've fallen?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Move to adjourn the September 24th, 2024 City Commission work session.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn the September 24th, 2024 City Commission meeting from Commissioner Opelt. It's been seconded by Commissioner Minton. Jared, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Yes.
Mayor Adamchak,
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yep.
Motion passes.